So when I was 12 years old, my best friend and I met two girls who were deaf. Um, and the four of us became best friends instantly. We didn't live in the same towns. We had come together in the summer for a summer group thing that we did. But we would spend the summer with each other each year. And so we became very close friends. And I had known since I was tiny that I wanted to be a teacher. Um, I just instantly knew that in my heart. And so after meeting these friends, it occurred to me at like 12 or 13, I wonder if there's deaf education teachers. Of course there are. And so I was lucky to know from an early teens what I wanted to do with my life. And I work in the Disability Resources and Educational Services Office at the University of Illinois. I was signing since I was about 12. I had some good friends who were deaf, and I became a teacher for the deaf when I graduated and went to school. So my undergrad is in deaf education, and I worked about 20 years in the K-12 public schools, working with deaf and hard of hearing students. I then moved to the university where I work in the disability office with all of the students who are deaf and hard of hearing, blind, low vision, and with speech disabilities. I am also the ASL interpreter coordinator and live captioning coordinator for the campus. And about 10 years, 12 years ago, I started noticing trouble with my own hearing. And so I was identified with a hearing loss that's progressive. And so I wear hearing aids and I identify as hard of hearing. I think the most important thing to remember when doing disability services is to make connections. It's easy to get into the habit of just pushing people through, meeting with them, looking at their documentation, write the letter, give them the accommodations, go. Next. It really has to be about connection and taking the time to really understand where this person's come from, what their experiences are, because it's not until you really listen and make sure that that person feels heard and seen that you can really make a difference and really help. So when I meet with students who are new to the university, I really make an effort to get to know them. And when we sit down together in our meeting, we have a real interactive process where I'm finding out what was it like for you in school. I ask questions like, tell me what types of accommodations you've used, what worked for you, what didn't work for you. So again, we're doing our best to reevaluate our policies and procedures and figure out what barriers might we be putting on our students without even realizing it. So it's a constant thing that we're discussing and trying to take a step back and look at so that we can provide the best services. So one example that I have is I had a deaf student who was a theater student, and so he had classes that were interpreted from 8 to 5 every day, Monday through Friday. But then in the evenings he would have play practice from like 6 at night till 11 or 11:30 at night. So when we had interpreters that were covering him 8 to 5 throughout the day, we also had to have a team of interpreters that were covering the play practices in the evenings. And that took a lot of interpreters, but it also meant that they were accruing a lot of hours. And so, human resources, HR, would say if they're extra help interpreters, then they only have so many hours that they can fill or so many days worth of interpreting. And once they hit that point, then they have to stop and sit back, because the point is that they're extra help. And if it's going to be more than whatever the number is, then what we need to do is hire more interpreters more permanently, not just have extra help. And so we thought maybe the idea of not hiring our interpreters as extra help, but hiring them as vendors would really help, because that way there's no time limit on the interpreters or as to how many hours they can interpret or days in a row that they can interpret. It's open and available, and then they just bill us. When they're extra help interpreters, they're university employees, and so we have to follow the university employee guidelines. When they're vendors, they're free to do whatever they can do within reasons, and ethical, not going too many hours in a row, or that type of thing, because we know that people get tired and their level of interpreting goes down. So again, that's why we try to hire really, really strong interpreters and live captioners, because they know these ethics and these things that can really help them make sure that they provide the best services. Because it's important. This is a deaf or hard of hearing student's education, and we don't want our service providers to be the barrier to them maybe not understanding what's happening in a class. We need our employees to be clear and be understood and have the utmost, highest ethics, and keep those ideas in mind while they're working with our students, so that we can provide the best possible accommodations. Yeah, this is what I was born to do. I know I was put on this earth to serve people, to love people, accept people, particularly students or anyone who's deaf and hard of hearing. And as a person now with a hearing loss myself, it's been really interesting to experience things that I thought I understood, but I really didn't, until I started really living parts. And even now I can say I still don't have a clue on what it's like to be completely deaf. But even the little bit of hearing loss that I have has changed me, and definitely changed my perspective on the world. So it's my passion.